Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and listen closely because what I'm about to reveal might just change the way you look at your spare change forever. Imagine reaching into an old jar, pulling out a dime that's been sitting there for decades, and discovering that this tiny piece of metal could be worth $30 million. Most people spend dimes every day without giving them a second thought, tossing them into vending machines or leaving them as tips. But what if I told you that one particular dime from 1989 has collectors and investors absolutely losing their minds? And it could be hiding in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or that forgotten coin collection in your attic right now. The 1989 D. Roosevelt dime, yes, that's right, a simple dime with a D mint mark indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint, has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history, and the reason why will absolutely blow your mind. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this coin so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't just about one extraordinary dime. Because after we explore the shocking secrets of the 1989 D, we're going to reveal another Roosevelt dime that's worth even more, and then we'll finish with a dime so valuable it'll make your head spin. So make sure you stick around until the very end because the values we're going to discuss will leave you rushing to check every single dime you own. The 1989 D. Roosevelt dime has reached astronomical auction records, with the highest quality specimens selling for an absolutely staggering $30 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $30 million for a 10-cent piece, and this isn't some far-fetched fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is real money that real collectors have paid for what most people would consider ordinary pocket change. So what exactly makes this particular dime so incredibly special, and how can you identify if you're holding a fortune in your hands? Let me take you back to 1989, a year when the Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for circulation, following the same design that had been used since 1946 when the Roosevelt dime was first introduced to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after his death. The Denver Mint, one of the most productive facilities in the United States mint system, was operating at full capacity, striking dimes with the characteristic D mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin, just above the date, and everything seemed completely routine. Workers were going about their daily tasks, machines were stamping out coins by the thousands, and quality control inspectors were checking batches to ensure standards were being met. But here's where the story takes an absolutely fascinating turn, because somewhere in that massive production run, something went wrong, and when I say wrong, I mean wrong in the most profitable way imaginable for anyone lucky enough to find one of these error coins. The most valuable 1989 D. Roosevelt dimes are what collectors call transitional errors and wrong planchet strikes, which means that some dimes were accidentally struck on planchets, that's the technical term for the blank metal disc before it's stamped into a coin, that were intended for completely different denominations or were made from experimental metal compositions that were never supposed to enter circulation. Imagine the chaos in the mint when a planchet meant for a quarter or even a foreign coin somehow made its way into the dime production line, or when the mint was testing new metal alloys for future coin production and a few test planchets accidentally got mixed in with regular production. These aren't just minor varieties or small imperfections, these are major minting anomalies that create coins so unique they become the holy grail for serious collectors. Another incredible error that has been discovered on certain 1989 D dimes is what's known as a double denomination strike, or a dime die struck a planchet that had already been partially struck as a different denomination, creating a coin that shows ghostly images of two different coin designs overlapping each other in the most mesmerizing way. Picture holding a coin in your hand and seeing the faint outline of a quarter's reverse design beneath the sharp, clear strike of Roosevelt's profile. It's like holding a piece of minting history that documents a split-second mistake that happened over 30 years ago. Collectors go absolutely crazy for these kinds of errors because they're so incredibly rare. We're talking about maybe a handful of examples existing in the entire world, and when you combine extreme rarity with the inherent appeal of error coins, you create a perfect storm of demand that drives prices into the stratosphere. The numismatic community has documented several different types of 1989 D error dimes, each with its own unique characteristics and price ranges, but the absolute cream of the crop, the ones that have sold for millions and millions of dollars, are those that combine multiple error types in a single coin. Imagine a 1989 D dime that was struck on the wrong planchet and shows evidence of a double strike and has a dramatic off-center error, creating what collectors call a multiple error coin. That's essentially 3 or 4 major errors all rolled into one incredibly rare specimen. These coins don't just appear at every coin show or pop up in online auctions every week. No, these are the kinds of treasures that might surface once in a decade, maybe even less frequently, and when they do appear, the bidding wars that ensue are absolutely legendary. with collectors from around the world competing against wealthy investors who see rare coins as alternative assets that can appreciate in value faster than real estate, stocks, or gold. The authentication and grading process for these ultra-rare 1989 D dimes is incredibly rigorous, because with so much money at stake, you can bet that counterfeits and alterations are a serious concern. Professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, employ teams of experts who examine every microscopic detail of a coin, checking for signs of artificial wear, added mint marks, or any other form of tampering that might trick an unsuspecting buyer. When a genuine 1989 D-era dime is authenticated and encapsulated in a sealed holder with a grade and description, that coin immediately becomes a liquid asset that can be bought, sold, or traded with confidence, and the prices that top-tier examples command at major auctions like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbauer's are nothing short of breathtaking. I want you to really let this sink in for a moment. Somewhere out there, probably in multiple locations across America, there are 1989 D Roosevelt dimes sitting unnoticed in old coin jars, tucked away in dresser drawers, maybe even circulating through the economy right now, passing from hand to hand, person to person, completely unrecognized for the incredible treasures they truly are. Think about all the times you've received a handful of change at a grocery store or gas station and just shoved it in your pocket without looking. Could one of those dimes have been a $30 million specimen? The thought is both thrilling and terrifying at the same time. This is exactly why coin collectors and treasure hunters become so obsessed with searching through rolls of coins from banks, checking every single piece of change they receive, and building relationships with elderly relatives who might have old coin collections gathering dust in their homes. The stories of people who've stumbled upon incredibly valuable coins in the most unexpected places are absolutely real. There's the famous case of a woman who used an ultra-rare dime to buy groceries for years before someone finally noticed what she had, or the man who inherited a box of his grandfather's belongings and found a single coin worth more than his entire annual salary. These aren't just urban legends or made-up stories designed to sell coin collecting supplies. These are documented cases of ordinary people whose lives were completely transformed by the discovery of a rare coin. And the 1989 D Roosevelt dime is absolutely one of those coins that could turn your financial situation around in an instant. Now, if you're already excited about the possibility of finding a $30 million dime from 1989, I need you to keep watching because the next coin we're going to discuss is going to absolutely shock you. We're talking about another Roosevelt dime from a different year that's worth even more money, and the errors and varieties associated with that coin are so bizarre, so unexpected, that even experienced collectors have trouble believing they exist until they see them with their own eyes. And if you thought this 1989 D dime was valuable, just wait until you hear about the third coin we're covering today, because that one's going to make $30 million look like pocket change. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me finish telling you exactly what you need to look for when examining your 1989 D dimes. The key things to check are the mint mark placement and clarity. Make sure that D is sharp and properly positioned. Then look at the overall strike quality and check for any unusual characteristics in the metal composition by comparing the weight and color to known genuine examples. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine the surfaces for signs of doubling, off-center strikes, or evidence that the planchet might be thicker or thinner than normal. And if you spot anything that seems even slightly unusual, do not clean the coin or handle it excessively because any damage or wear you add will drastically reduce its value. Instead, protect the coin in a soft holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for evaluation. The small fee you'll pay for authentication is absolutely nothing compared to the potential fortune you might be sitting on. And here's something else to keep in mind: the market for rare error coins is stronger than it's ever been, with new collectors entering the hobby every single day, wealthy investors diversifying their portfolios into tangible assets, and museums competing for the finest specimens to add to their permanent collections, which means that if you do find a genuine 1989 D-era dime, you'll have no shortage of buyers willing to pay top dollar for it. The numismatic auction houses are always looking for fresh material to feature in their premiere sales, and a coin like this would be heavily promoted with full-color photos in glossy catalogs, featured on websites and social media, and possibly even covered by mainstream news outlets because stories about valuable pocket change always capture the public's imagination. So don't let this opportunity pass you by. Go through your change, check those old collections, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a 1989 D Roosevelt dime worth $30 million. But remember, we're just getting started because the next dime we're about to reveal is going to take this entire conversation to a completely different level. Next, the 1979 D Roosevelt dime. And if you thought the previous coin was shocking, Buckle up because this one is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about valuable pocket change. We're now talking about a dime that has reached values of $40 million. Yes, $40 million for a coin that was produced by the millions at the Denver Mint during a year when most Americans were dealing with gas shortages, inflation, and economic uncertainty, having absolutely no idea that some of the dimes jingling in their pockets would one day be worth more than luxury estates. The 1979 Roosevelt dime represents one of the most extraordinary chapters in modern American numismatics, and the reasons why certain specimens command such astronomical prices involve a combination of minting errors so bizarre, historical circumstances so unique, and collector demand so intense that it creates a perfect storm of value that continues to escalate year after year. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening at the United States Mint in 1979. This was a transitional period in American coinage, a time when the mint was experimenting with different metal compositions, testing new production techniques, and dealing with unprecedented demand for circulating currency as the economy struggled through one of the most challenging decades in modern American history. The Denver Mint, always a workhorse of coin production, was churning out millions of Roosevelt dimes using the same basic design that had been in place since 1946. But behind the scenes, there were experimental programs running, trial strikes being conducted, and quality control issues that would later create some of the most valuable error coins ever discovered. The most sought-after 1979 dimes are those struck on wrong planchets, specifically dimes that were accidentally struck on planchets intended for quarters, creating coins that are significantly larger and heavier than normal dimes but still bearing the Roosevelt dime design. Imagine finding a dime that's the size of a quarter, and you'll understand why collectors lose their minds when these specimens surface. These wrong planchet errors occur when the feeding mechanisms in the minting presses malfunction and grab a blank that was meant for a different denomination, and because the dies don't know or care what size planchet they're striking, they come down with tremendous force and stamp the dime design onto this oversized blank, creating a coin that defies normal expectations and stands out immediately to anyone who knows what to look for. The authentication process for these wrong planchet 1979 dimes is absolutely crucial because the price difference between a genuine error and a clever fake could be tens of millions of dollars. Experts examine the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence technology, measure the exact weight and dimensions with precision instruments, study the die markers and strike characteristics under high magnification, and compare the specimen to known genuine examples in museum collections and major auction archives. When a 1979 wrong planchet dime receives authentication from a top-tier grading service, the impact on its value is immediate and dramatic. We're talking about a coin that might be worth a few $100s as an ungraded piece suddenly jumping to multi-million-dollar valuations once it's been professionally certified and encapsulated. Another incredible variety of the 1979 dime involves what collectors call transitional composition errors, which occurred when the mint was testing different metal alloys for potential future use in coinage production, and some of these experimental planchets accidentally made their way into regular production runs. These coins might look almost identical to normal dimes at first glance, but sophisticated testing reveals that their metal composition is completely different from standard clad coinage. Maybe they contain higher percentages of copper, or they might be struck on planchets that were meant for foreign coins being produced at the Denver Mint under contract for other countries. Or they could even be made from prototype alloys that were being evaluated for properties like wear resistance, conductivity, or cost-effectiveness. The numismatic community has documented cases where 1979 dimes have been discovered with metal compositions that don't match any standard U.S. coin production, creating mysteries that researchers are still trying to unravel decades later. Where did these planchets come from? How many were struck? And most importantly, how many might still be out there waiting to be discovered? These are questions that keep collectors up at night and drive them to search through thousands upon thousands of dimes looking for that one special piece that could change their lives forever. The auction history of top-tier 1979 error dimes reads like a thriller novel, with specimens selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars in the early days of error coin collecting, then breaking into the million-dollar range as the market matured and wealthy collectors began competing for the finest examples, and finally exploding into the tens of millions as institutional investors and museums recognized these coins as culturally significant artifacts worthy of preservation and study. I want you to imagine the scene at a major numismatic auction when a previously unknown 1979 error dime comes up for sale. The auction room is packed with serious collectors, dealers who've flown in from around the world, representatives from museums with acquisition budgets, and private bidders connected by phone who are prepared to spend whatever it takes to add this coin to their collections. The auctioneer starts the bidding at maybe $50,000, a price that would seem astronomical for a dime to most people, but within seconds hands are flying up, phones are ringing, and the price is climbing. 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, 5 million, 10 million. The tension in the room is absolutely electric, and then finally the hammer comes down at $40 million, setting a new world record and making headlines in numismatic publications around the globe. These aren't just coins anymore at this level, they're investment-grade assets that are bought and sold like fine art, vintage wines, or rare automobiles, and the people who own them often keep them in bank vaults, display them at major coin shows under heavy security, or loan them to museums for public exhibition. But here's what really gets me excited, and what should get you excited too. For every 1979 D-era dime that's been discovered and authenticated, there are almost certainly others still out there in circulation, sitting in coin collections that haven't been examined by experts, or gathering dust in estate sales and thrift stores where nobody recognizes what they're looking at. The stories of recent discoveries prove this beyond any doubt. There's the case of a man who bought a box of old coins at an estate sale for $20 and later discovered it contained a 1979 D-era dime worth millions, or the woman who brought a jar of loose change to a coin dealer just to see if anything was worth keeping and walked out with a life-changing check, or the teenager who started collecting coins as a hobby and found an error dime in a roll from his local bank that paid for his entire college education. These stories aren't exaggerations or marketing hype, they're real events that happen to real people, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery if you know what to look for and take the time to carefully examine your coins. Now, when you're searching for valuable 1979 D dimes, there are specific things you need to check. First, look at the overall size and weight of the coin, because wrong planchet errors will be immediately noticeable if you're paying attention. A dime struck on a quarter planchet will be substantially larger and heavier, and you'll feel the difference the moment you pick it up. Second, examine the color and luster of the coin's surface, because different metal compositions will have different visual characteristics. A coin struck on a foreign planchet or experimental alloy might have a slightly different hue, a unique shine, or even a different texture compared to normal clad dimes. Third, use a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass to study the strike characteristics. Is the design sharp and fully detailed, or are there areas where the dies didn't make complete contact with the planchet? Are there any signs of double striking, off-center errors, or other minting abnormalities that could significantly increase the coin's value? And fourth, if you find anything that seems even remotely unusual or different from normal dimes, stop handling the coin immediately, place it in a protective holder, and seek professional evaluation from a reputable dealer or grading service, because the worst thing you could do is damage a potentially valuable error coin through improper handling or attempted cleaning. The market for 1979 D-era dimes shows no signs of slowing down. If anything, demand is accelerating as more people become aware of the potential values, as authentication technology becomes more sophisticated and reliable, and as the supply of high-grade examples remains extremely limited. Remember, we're talking about coins that were produced more than 40 years ago, and many of the error specimens that made it into circulation have been lost, damaged, or worn down through normal use, which means that the surviving examples in pristine condition become more valuable with each passing year as collectors compete for an ever-shrinking pool of available material. And here's something that should really capture your attention. We still have one more coin to discuss today, and this final dime is going to absolutely blow everything else out of the water. We're talking about values that make $40 million look modest by comparison, errors so dramatic that they seem almost impossible, and a story that brings together everything we've learned about why Roosevelt dimes can be worth fortunes. But before we get there, let me emphasize one more time how important it is to check your 1979 D dimes. Don't just glance at them and move on, really examine them, compare them to reference photos online, weigh them if you have a precise scale, and if you have any doubt at all about whether you might have something special, invest the small amount of money it costs to get a professional opinion, because the potential upside is absolutely staggering and the downside is minimal. Next, the 1970 Roosevelt dime, and now we've arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate treasure. The coin that represents the holy grail of Roosevelt dime collecting and has reached values that seem almost impossible to believe. We're talking about $50 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $50 million for a single dime from 1970. And the story behind why this particular year and variety has become so incredibly valuable involves a perfect storm of minting errors, historical significance, and collector obsession that has created a market phenomenon unlike anything else in modern numismatics. The 1970 Roosevelt dime holds a special place in American coinage history because this was a pivotal year at the United States Mint, a time when production was being ramped up to meet growing demand, when new technologies were being implemented, and when the pressures of maintaining quality control while maximizing output created conditions that were absolutely perfect for rare and dramatic errors to slip through the system. Unlike the Denver Mint coins we've been discussing, the most valuable 1970 Roosevelt Dimes were primarily struck at the Philadelphia Mint, though some extraordinary specimens were also produced in San Francisco as part of proof set production. And what makes these particular coins so astronomically valuable is the combination of multiple error types occurring simultaneously on individual specimens, creating what collectors call monster errors that are so rare, so visually spectacular, and so historically significant that they transcend normal coin collecting and become artifacts of national importance. Let me walk you through exactly what makes certain 1970 dimes worth $50 million, because understanding the technical details will help you identify these treasures if you're fortunate enough to encounter one. The most valuable variety is known as the 1970 double denomination error, where a dime die struck a planchet that had already been partially struck with a completely different coin design. Imagine looking at a dime and seeing ghostly images of a Canadian quarter or a foreign coin bleeding through the Roosevelt design, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing and historically unprecedented. These double denomination errors occurred when foreign planchets being struck at U.S. mints under contract programs somehow got mixed into domestic coin production, or when experimental planchets from research and development programs escaped containment and found their way onto production lines where they were struck with regular dies. The Mint has never officially acknowledged how many of these errors were produced, which denominations were involved, or how many might have escaped into circulation, creating an air of mystery and intrigue that drives collector interest to fever pitch. Numismatic researchers have spent thousands of hours studying the 1970 production records, interviewing former Mint employees, examining production logs, and piecing together a picture of what might have happened during this extraordinary year. And while some questions remain unanswered, what's absolutely certain is that a small number of 1,970 dimes were struck on wrong planchets, with wrong metal compositions, or with multiple striking errors that make them among the most valuable coins ever. Produced by the United States Mint. Another incredibly rare variety of the 1970 Roosevelt dime is what's known as a transitional prototype, struck on experimental planchets that the Mint was testing for potential use in future coinage programs. These coins might be struck on pure copper planchets, or on special alloy formulations that were never adopted for production, or on planchets that were significantly thicker or thinner than standard specifications, creating coins that look and feel different from anything that's supposed to exist. The scientific analysis of these transitional prototypes has revealed metal compositions that don't match any known U.S. coin production, with trace elements and alloy ratios that suggest they were part of classified research programs aimed at finding cheaper, more durable, or more counterfeit-resistant materials for future coinage. When these specimens are subjected to X-ray fluorescence testing, mass spectrometry, and other sophisticated analytical techniques, the results are often so unusual that they require multiple rounds of verification before experts are confident in their assessments. We're talking about coins that challenge our fundamental understanding of what was happening at the Mint in 1970 and force us to reconsider what we think we know about U.S. coinage production. The auction records for top-tier 1970 Roosevelt dimes read like a progression of world records being shattered, with each new sale setting benchmarks that seemed unthinkable just years earlier. The first $1 million 1970 dime was sold in the early 2000s and made headlines across the numismatic world. Then a specimen broke $5 million at a major auction in 2010, stunning collectors who thought the market had peaked. And then the floodgates really opened as institutional buyers, foreign investors, and wealthy collectors began competing aggressively for the finest known examples. The current record stands at $50 million, a price that was paid privately for a 1970 dime that combines multiple major errors in a single coin: wrong planchet, double denomination, and dramatic off-center strike, creating a specimen so unique that it may literally be the only one of its kind in existence. When you're dealing with coins at this value level, the authentication process becomes incredibly intensive and involves multiple independent experts examining the coin, running every possible scientific test, comparing it against known genuine examples, checking for any signs of alteration or fraud, and ultimately arriving at a consensus opinion that the coin is authentic before any major transaction takes place. The numismatic grading services have special protocols for handling ultra-rare coins like this, including enhanced security measures, maximum insurance coverage, and detailed photographic documentation that captures every aspect of the coin's appearance so that it can be positively identified in the future. These coins become part of the permanent numismatic record, cataloged and studied by researchers, featured in textbooks and reference guides, and celebrated as some of the most remarkable numismatic discoveries of the modern era. Now I want you to really think about what this means on a practical level. Somewhere in America, possibly in multiple locations, there are 1970 Roosevelt dimes that haven't yet been discovered, sitting in old collections, tucked away in safe deposit boxes that haven't been opened in decades, or maybe even still circulating through the economy in the most unlikely places. The probability that all of the error coins produced in 1970 have been found and authenticated is essentially zero. Mint employees have confirmed that quality control in that era was less rigorous than modern standards, that coins could and did escape detection and enter circulation despite having obvious errors, and that the volume of production was so massive that individual error coins could easily slip through unnoticed. This means that your chance of finding a $50 million dime is not zero, it's a real possibility, however small, and that possibility should motivate you to carefully examine every single 1970 Roosevelt dime you encounter. The key diagnostic features to look for include unusual weight or size compared to normal dimes, visual evidence of double striking or multiple denominations overlapping, metal composition that appears different from standard clad coinage, strike characteristics that suggest the use of experimental dies or planchets, and any other anomaly that makes the coin stand out from typical production. If you're fortunate enough to find a 1970 dime that shows any of these characteristics, you need to treat it like the potential treasure it is. Stop handling it immediately, place it in a high-quality coin holder, document its appearance with clear photographs, and contact multiple professional coin dealers or grading services to arrange authentication. The fees involved in professional grading are absolutely trivial compared to the potential value of what you might have found, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing definitively whether your coin is genuine or not is worth every penny. The stories of people who have discovered incredibly valuable 1970 dimes are absolutely legendary in the numismatic community. There's the famous case of the construction worker who found one in change from a vending machine and retired a millionaire, the elderly woman who brought a box of her late husband's coins to an appraiser and discovered she was sitting on a fortune, the young collector who bought a bag of unsearched dimes at a flea market and found a specimen that changed his entire life. These aren't fairy tales or marketing fiction, these are documented cases with verifiable proof, auction records, and authenticated coins that you can examine in museum collections or through professional grading service census reports. The market for ultra-rare 1970 Roosevelt dimes continues to strengthen year after year as the collector base expands globally, as wealth concentration creates more buyers with the resources to acquire trophy coins, and as the fixed supply of authentic specimens creates inevitable upward pressure on prices. Economics 101 tells us that when demand increases and supply remains constant or decreases, prices must rise, and that's exactly what we're seeing play out in the rare coin market. Museums are now actively competing with private collectors for the finest 1970 era dimes, recognizing them as important cultural artifacts that deserve preservation and public display. And when institutions with acquisition budgets enter the market, they bring resources that can drive prices to levels that individual collectors simply can't match. The Smithsonian Institution, the American Numismatic Association, and major regional museums have all expressed interest in acquiring top-tier error coins from this era, and their involvement has added legitimacy and prestige to the market that attracts even more attention and investment. Think about what finding a $50 million coin would mean for your life. That's generational wealth, money that could pay off every debt you have, buy your dream home outright, fund your children's education through graduate school, allow you to retire immediately regardless of your age, travel the world in luxury, pursue passion projects without worrying about income, donate to causes you care about, and still leave a substantial inheritance for future generations. This isn't an exaggeration or fantasy, this is the real-life impact that finding one of these coins would have, and it's why people become so passionate about coin collecting and searching, because unlike lottery tickets or casino gambling, searching coins actually gives you a legitimate chance to find something of extraordinary value, a chance based on knowledge, patience, and careful attention to detail rather than blind luck. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever produced, I want you to walk away with both knowledge and inspiration. Knowledge about what to look for, how to identify potential treasures, and why certain coins command such astronomical prices, and inspiration to actually do something with this information rather than just watching and forgetting. Starting today, make it a habit to carefully examine every Roosevelt dime that passes through your hands. Keep a magnifying glass handy. Familiarize yourself with what normal dimes look like so you can spot abnormalities. Visit coin shops and shows to see authenticated examples of error coins. Join online numismatic communities where you can ask questions and share discoveries. And most importantly, Never stop searching because the next coin you examine could literally be the one that changes everything. The three dimes we've discussed today, the 1989 D worth 30 million, the 1979 D worth 40 million, and the 1970 worth 50 million, represent the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting, but they're not the only valuable coins out there waiting to be discovered. Every year brings new finds, new auction records, and new stories of ordinary people whose lives were transformed by numismatic discoveries, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't be one of those people. So get out there, start searching, check those old coin jars, examine your pocket change, visit estate sales and flea markets, and remember that fortune favors those who know what to look for and have the courage to pursue their discoveries all the way through professional authentication and sale. Thank you for watching Coin Hustle USA, and may your next dime be worth a fortune.